Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us today. I'm Andrew with A.L. Johnson Life Insurance Agency, and today I have a couple fine ladies who are joining me for a great conversation about generational wealth. And so we're going to go ahead and get right into that. Let me go ahead and introduce you. So first, I have Miss Angela Habeebullah. She is the owner of the law offices of Angela Habeebullah. She helps families with estate planning. She helps with bankruptcy, tax resolution, and a whole host of things. And so we'll get into that. And we also have Miss Kathy Allen Gray, the owner of Ladies Appraisals. How you ladies doing this evening?
Great. How about you?
I'm
We're
doing
doing
well. I'm
excellent.
doing well. Listen, so for those of you that are just tuning in, when we were backstage, they said, well, can you handle two ladies? You're just a man. And I had to let them know I have four sisters, so I got this. No problem. But let's get into the conversation. So first off, Miss Kathy Allen Gray, I met her a couple years back. We connected through an article that she did through CNBC. The article was about discrimination in appraisals, talking about the property values being valued lower than they should be for African American families, and how that really affects and impacts our wealth over the long term. And so, Ms. Gray, can you just tell the people a little bit about your business and why it is you do what you do?
Well, Ladies Appraisal Service was established in 2001. I'm a licensed real estate appraiser in the state of Missouri. I have resided in the urban area pretty much all my life. Um, and my purpose is just to be fair and unbiased in appraisals, no matter where they are performed, whether they're performed in the urban core or elsewhere. But with me, the issue is always credibility and professionalism, and it should be demanded and accepted and respected by those in the profession and by the clients that we serve.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so we're going to unpack that a little more here in just a bit, get the introductions out of the way. Ms. Angela, can you share with the people what it is that you do and why you're in your business?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this. So, as our host said, my name is Angela Habeebullah. I am a licensed attorney. I practice in Missouri and Kansas. The areas of practice are estate planning, bankruptcy, tax dispute resolution. And basically, I became an attorney because in undergrad, I got a degree in math. And so I thought to myself, well, what can I do with that degree? I didn't want to teach. I didn't want to be a scientist. And so, believe it or not, people with like scientific backgrounds do really well in law school. So I said, you know what? I'm going to change the world. I'm going to become an attorney. So I went to law school, eager to become an attorney and change the world. Well, lo and behold, I've made some changes, but I haven't impacted the way I really wanted to do it. But basically, I'm just here to give the common everyday person a voice in court and let them know that you matter, you have representation, you can be represented by an individual who really, truly cares about you. And I've been doing this for almost 30 years now, and it has been a wonderful ride.
Listen, I'm sure within your time, you both have seen a lot, and so we want to glean from your experience this evening to help the audience in their personal situations. So for anyone who's just tuning in, I'd like for you to go ahead and share this stream. There's going to be a lot of important information. Grab your notepad, grab your tea, your water, and we're going to get into it. And so Jackson County, when it came to the appraisals and the tax assessments last year, there were a whole bunch of disputes. People's taxes almost tripled. I saw instances of people losing their homes because of that. They couldn't handle it. They couldn't afford it. There's a huge gentrification process that's been going on really since COVID. And so, Ms. Gray, can you speak to the tax assessment as well as how people have been able to dispute and what that whole process has looked like?
Well, I performed a lot of tax assessments last year. I think a lot of it is pretty much wrapping up. Um, in, I think there is a general misunderstanding about what drives the real estate market in terms of the public understanding, period. So some of those were justified, some of them were not. But there has been an overall extreme increase in real estate prices. And unfortunately, as a consumer, you cannot have it both ways. You cannot have equity and not have an increase in taxes. It's not possible. So it's my understanding now that it has gone through the legal proceedings and that anyone who was there are some legal issues involved here in terms of um, raising above a 15 percentage in market value. I think there's some legal determinations that have been made that have been seen as that being unacceptable, and therefore those people may get a credit. And if they do, it will be on their 2024 taxes. I don't expect anybody to get, there will be no money distributed. And it's a serious situation, but that is the situation in this country. Whenever your property increases in value, in market value, it does affect your assessed value. And your assessed value is not your market value. When we talk assessed value, we are always speaking about value that is imposed by a governmental entity. In this case, it is imposed by the county. So that is your assessed value, which in residential real estate is generally 19% of the market value. So whenever your market value goes up, consequently, your assessed value goes up and therefore your taxes go up. So that's what I'm talking about in terms of equity. So that is
Mm.
what I know about the subject at this point.
Got it. Got it. I appreciate that. And so we want to, wrap this conversation around generational wealth. You've been an appraiser for several decades right here in the Kansas City market. And so can you give people an indication of the power of real estate as it relates to preparing generational wealth for their families? When you first started, what were the housing prices, maybe just median or average when you started versus today? Like give people the big picture.
Okay, I'm going to give you a personal picture. I mean, I came to Kansas. I'm 70 years old. I have no problem with,
I don't even believe
saying
it. I
my
don't
age.
believe it, but I'll
Okay,
take it.
I'm an elder. Okay, it is what it is. So, so I have no fear at this point. But I came to Kansas City in 1972, and I was married. My ex-husband and I were married in 1979. And people are upset today about interest rates, but in 1979, he and I had A1 credit. He was a veteran, and we had a 7 and 7/8% interest rate FHA.
Mm.
And we thought we had died and gone to heaven. We paid $15,200 for a two-story home on
Mm.
32nd and Cleveland, was 3 bedrooms, one bath with off-street parking.
I
Um,
gotta stop you. You said you bought a house. You bought a house for 15,000. Okay, all right. I just want to make sure I heard that. Okay, 15,000. Got it. Got it.
mhm, mhm. In good condition.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
know, there was nothing wrong with it. We had a 7 and 7/8% interest rate. which
Wow.
at that time was excellent.
Mm,
Okay. I have
okay.
seen interest rates, the lowest I have ever seen interest rates in terms of housing was after the 2008 crash. I've seen housing interest rates as high as 16% in the 80s under Ronald Reagan.
Wow.
Anybody who lived through those 80s can attest to it. And that was the beginning of the assault on the Black community with the infiltration of drugs and the buildup of the prison system. So that gives you an idea of a 50-year spread. I mean, a house today that has been gutted out, um, generally they'll bring between 40 to $80,000. That's gutted, just depending upon where in the urban core where it is and the size of it. So we're seeing astronomical prices. We're seeing prices because we don't have inventory. There
Mm,
is a severe housing shortage in the United States that has not been addressed in over 30 years.
wow. So,
And that is what is
irrespective
causing.
of interest rates, irrespective of incomes rising, we are still in a housing crunch. And so when people are saying right now that interest rates were a little high compared to COVID when they cut interest rates to zero, the federal interest rate was zero, mortgages were 2-3%, and so as they continued to raise rates, people started saying, "Oh, the interest rates are too high." But what you're telling us is in '79 you paid over 7%, and that was a good rate because in the '80s you were looking at 13-14%. And so where we're at right now, would you say that's where we should be interest rate wise?
Well, I think to a certain extent, interest rates are going to be higher than 3 to 4% that we have seen at historically low rates because they were at those historically low rates. Because remember, we had an oversupply.
Mm.
We have rarely had a balanced supply of housing in this country within the last 30 years or so. Okay. So we had all that housing inventory. They dropped the rates to make it affordable for those properties to be acquired. Okay,
Right.
but then they got absorbed, and the rates remain low, but demand has remained high because then now we have the millennials and Gen X coming into the market, and this country does not have a consistent housing policy in terms of building new houses. And for example, in Kansas City, Missouri, in the last year, do you know how many housing permits were pulled for new housing construction in Jackson County?
What's that number?
7.
Mm.
Really? Wow. Okay. Okay. So okay, let's pause right here because I want to make sure that everybody's catching this. And if you're not, I got my notepad. I'm taking notes. So you definitely should be taking notes on this. But for those of you who are just tuning in, I'm talking to Kathy Allen Gray, the owner of Ladies Appraisal, as well as Angela Habeebullah from the law offices of Angela Habeebullah. We have an appraiser here as well as a estate planning attorney, and we're talking about generational wealth. Now, Ms. Gray, you said you and your husband bought a house for $15,000 in '79 at over 7% interest. Fast forward, a gutted house in the city is 40 to 80,000. What are the average prices for a move-in ready home for a new family?
Move-in ready homes are running, somewhere between 150 to $250,000, depending upon whether the level of rehabilitation. For
Wow.
those who have been, rehabbed, gutted down to the studs from the interior, and then built out with basically everything new. So basically, the all the contractor is using is the foundation and the framing, but
Got it.
everything else, like a new roof, new siding, new HVACs, and they've gutted it down to the studs and they're building it out. That is next to new. And
Right.
depending
So,
upon where you are in the city, that property is going to run you anywhere from 170 to 300,000. But you got to understand in suburbia, new construction is running at about a half a mil.
got it.
So that is
Wow.
inexpensive in comparison to suburbia, you know.
So let's talk about generational wealth for a second because 15 to 150,000 within the time that you and your husband bought your home, that's a 10x return. That's insane. Like, that is insane. You've 10 times the value of a home, just by purchasing at the right time. And so when we
But
talk about passing on generational wealth, that's where Miss Angela comes in with the estate planning. And so, can you tell us, just maybe a story or two about people who have possibly put real estate into a trust to pass on to the next generation, or even life insurance, which is my business? Talk to us about estate planning.
Well, let me say, I'm just gonna, like Kathy, share a personal story. My mom, I grew up on 19th and Cleveland, 1911 Cleveland, as a matter of fact, and our house was bought by the government by through eminent domain. They wanted the property, so they paid my mom for the house. My mom went and purchased a house in Hyde Park and paid, I mean, I grew up in that house, okay, and paid little of nothing for that house. Well, when my mom passed, we didn't have to go to probate or anything because we had documentation in place for the house upon my mom's death, for the house to automatically transfer to me and my siblings. The house now in Hyde Park that I grew up in, that my mom, as a divorced mom of, she had 20 kids from the South, no formal education. That house is now worth, if we were to sell that house today, we could sell it for at least $300,000. And it's a house in Hyde Park. My mom paid probably, I'm going to say, at the most 30,000 for the house. And so that's the importance of passing assets on to the next generation. And let me just also say, we avoided probate court, because had we gone through probate court, people need to be aware of this. Probate court, and if you have to go through probate court, okay, but there are fees that you have to pay. And part of those fees are based on the value of the property in the estate. And so that's where estate planning comes into play. You can avoid all of that. You can avoid your children and relatives and all that acting crazy, because people, let me tell you, when people die and it's assets and money's involved, people just kind of experience insanity.
Oh,
And
I've seen
so,
it. Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
they really do. And so, but if you have it written down and you have a plan, guess what? People can challenge it, but it'd be a waste of time and money. And so I encourage everybody, I don't care what the value of your home is, whatever. If you own a home, you need to have a plan, because that's basically what estate planning is, just having a plan in place. And so I cannot stress the importance of having a plan in place in the event that
Now,
something happens to you.
one thing I've seen, because before I got into insurance, I've been doing insurance for 15 years now. Before that, I was a mortgage loan officer. And so just being around financial services, I know one thing about us is, how can I say this? Because we're not educated in school on financial matters, sometimes these things can be intimidating. So I just want to break this down to the smallest common denominator. And can you just talk to the person who doesn't understand the paperwork that goes into estate planning? Maybe some key terms that they should understand. And when they speak with an attorney such as yourself, what documents do they need to have to properly estate plan?
Okay, sure. So just in common everyday language, when we say estate planning, this is what I want you to think of. I want you to imagine you have a piece of paper, and on that paper, I want you to draw a box. And within that box, I want you to think of all the things that you own, physical things, okay? Um, uh, Tangible things. When we say estate, we're just saying an imaginary block with everything that you own contained within that. Okay. And so that is your estate. Now, when you're not here, the person who owns these assets, you are the known, you are what is known as the either the well, there are different categories, so I'm trying to keep it simple, so everybody can follow us. So we can have plans that operate while we're living, okay, such as a trust. And we can also have plans that come into play once we're no longer able to talk living here, we're dead. Okay. So let's first talk about the plans while we're living. Part of your estate plan, again, this imaginary box with everything that you own in it, we can, if we want, create a trust. What is a trust? A trust is a legal entity. That means that the law, the legislature has given that recognition. The legislature have said, okay, this entity has status such that if they want to go to court or they want to sue somebody or they want to do whatever, they have an identity. Okay. So when we're talking about a trust, a legal organization or a group or entity that is recognized by the law as something that has status. So if you have a trust, a person has to create that trust. Well, you have a trustee, and then you have the person whose the property belongs to, and they want to put that property in the trust. That's the not testator. God, the name escapes me. Okay, forgive me.
The executor. Well, I believe that'd be the executor of the trust. I think she froze up a little bit
It's
there.
property, but you're allowing another entity to control, manage, and decide what happens. Now, you, as the person who created that, you always have the right, depending on what type of trust you set up, you can change it, revoke it, do away with it, say I'm done, or whatever.
Okay, so when it comes to, and let me just make sure I'm recapping this properly. You create a trust. It's basically like you said, put an imaginary box. Everything that you own, you can put it into the trust, which creates another separate entity from yourself. So when we think about the Donald Trumps and the wealthy and all these people that are able to go bankrupt and then get it all back and go, a lot of them use trusts to protect their assets. But the second phase of that is when you're no longer here, you're able to give the trust instructions, and the executor is the person that carries out those instructions. So I have a client who purchased $1 million life insurance policy. He has children that are in their early 20s. He said that I don't want to leave them, if something happened today, I don't want to leave them just $1 million cash because I don't believe that they will be responsible with it. For that person, they can have the trust own the life insurance policy. But what are some of the instructions that you've seen throughout your career that people tend to put on an amount of money such as that?
So good question. Good question. So a lot of times, what I advise individuals to do is because I'm of the philosophy, if you don't earn it, you don't earn it, you're going to blow it. Okay. And so a lot of times there are restrictions on that money, such as age, how it can be spent, what it can be used for. Those are good things, because I just know I'm the mom of 3 adult children. And had I passed and left my children some money, I definitely would have said the money can only be used for educational purposes, buying a home, health or illness. I wouldn't just give them, especially because just my opinion, I think young people under the age of 30, they have a little maturing to do. And so I would have also put an age restriction. No, I'm going to have a trustee manage this money until my children are of an age where they can, one, appreciate the hard work their parents did to come up with this money, and that they can then in turn continue creating generational wealth. Okay, my parents left us this money. We're not going to blow it. We have children. Let's continue this thing so that when something happens to us, our children, and that's how you break the curse. That's how you get out of this. I ain't got nothing, never will have anything. And
Right,
So
right.
definitely putting those restrictions in there. When you can get the money, how the money can be used. And that's the beauty of a trust. While you're living, you can dictate how and when your money is going to be spent, even when you're in the grave. You're speaking from the grave.
Love it. I love it. Ms. Gray, can you talk to us about how the two of you work together as an appraiser and an estate planning attorney? How do those
Yeah,
two work together?
yeah, I'd love to. I mean, I think, now pat myself on the back, I do. I think one of the things I'm good at doing is kind of bringing people together. And I like to bring particularly African American people together that so we can do business because our money has to bounce. That's the problem with our community. But Angela reached out to me one day, and she was looking for an appraisal because when people transition or expire, however you like to look at it, die, their property has to be valued, particularly if it winds up in probate, because probate wants to know what is the value of this property. And she was like, Kathy, I need an appraisal. And she and I began to talk, and I realized that I probably knew some people that could be beneficial to her, and vice versa. And that's how it came about. And so I do, and in addition, I have a lot of, in terms of appraisal, how this fits into estate planning. Like she said, you have to know what is the value of the assets that you're putting in the trust, particularly if it's real estate. And then when you expire, and if it goes through probate, what is the value of it now? Okay. I also have clients, and this is becoming, I'm noticing in my practice, I don't know about other appraisers, but interfamily sales of real estate before one generation expires. For example, the parents are selling the house to their children, and that's a great idea. And they call me and they'll say, we want an appraisal. We're selling between family members, but we just want to be fair, and we want to know what the fair market value is, and we will use that as a base point to make our decision. But there is generational transfer of wealth, sometimes even before death occurs. That is happening, and it's a great way, to get transfer property, particularly in times like these.
That makes a lot of sense. Let's
And
talk a little.
can I add to her story just a little bit?
Absolutely.
I just want to make it be known. So you're right. I met Kathy when I was in the middle of a probate action, and this case, I won't name the parties, but it was a wife whose husband had died. Husband had children from a previous relationship, but no children with the mom. And so, as I said, when people die, people get insane. And so, as a part of the probate procedure, I had to have the house that wife and now the deceased husband lived in for years appraised. And so, because I am an African American professional woman, I specifically sought out an African American woman appraiser. That's what I Googled. I put find me a black woman appraisal in Kansas City. I'm just keeping it 100. Now, I will use other professionals, but that is my preference and has always been my preference throughout life, because I'm a professional. I want people to seek me out. I'm always going to look for somebody like me first. Nothing against anybody else. So when I found Miss Kathy, she and I had lunch, and within 10, 15 minutes, I knew this is the lady. This is Lady Appraiser. This is who I'm going to work with, because as she said, she's 100, honest, fair. And I was the opposing counsel, had these ridiculous numbers for the house. It was worth $1 million, and I knew it wasn't. And I'm like, now this woman, I can trust her. I can trust her. And so I just wanted to share that.
I appreciate that.
Well, I
I
love that. I
appreciate
love that. So, Ms. Gray, let's talk about that a little bit. There are a lot of people, real estate agents, property flippers that tune into this show. And so I want to talk about really increasing the value of a property. And so, if someone's remodeling their home, what are the areas that they should focus on to gain the most value?
Short-term items. Short-term items are items that are necessary for the functioning of a house. That, for example, it's going to be your roof, your furnace, your air conditioning, your plumbing, and your electrical. Okay? Those are integral, necessary components of a house. However, they are not meant to last for a long period of time. For example, it's rare to find a furnace or air conditioner that has a warranty over 20 years. It's rare for a hot water heater to have a warranty over 7 years. So those are short term items, but they are a major expense item, but they are necessary for the ecosystem of the house to function.
Mm.
And so a lot of times people put money into cosmetics and what I call putting lipstick on a pig. And let's go in and paint and carpet it. But the roof is old. The furnace is probably maybe got 2 to 5 years on it. You know, they haven't really done and replacement of those short-term items or bringing things up to code will have a greater impact on your overall value than it will just be to do cosmetic treatment.
That's a gem because I know what I generally hear is the kitchen um, and the bedrooms. So it's like you said, it's really more aesthetic, cosmetic repairs, landscaping, curb appeal, things of that nature. But what you're saying, it's really the bones of the house that matter the most.
Those are what sell houses, those are what the public sees. But
Right.
when we talk about value, what brings value are having those HVAC systems up to par.
Mm.
Because the cosmetics is a simple thing to do.
Mhm.
Okay. For example, I bought this house, the house you see me in, I bought it as a foreclosure in 2009. At that time, those things needed to be done. I had the electrical updated. I ran 220. I had a new furnace, a new air conditioner. The roof was okay. The foundation was okay. But today, 15 years later, some of my plugs are not working properly. And I had an electrician come in over the weekend, and I have $2,000 worth of electrical work that needs to be done. Things wear out, and that is something else that we have to take into consideration when we're talking about property. Period. All physical things deteriorate. That's just a fact.
Mm. So let's dig into how we originally connected, which was during COVID. There were a lot of there was a lot of press around the fact that if you were an African American family, you wanted to take down the pictures off the wall, anything that indicated that there was a black family in the home because appraisers were coming in and they were giving lower property values. First question: do you still see that happening today, or has that improved since we last spoke?
Well, thanks to Jillian White, and Jillian White is a certified residential appraiser in New Jersey, and she used to be over, I believe it's called Best.com, and they were in housing. But anyway, in terms of the industry, it has forced the industry to establish laws, rules, and regulations um, to train appraisers to be able to more identify their own bias. Is it still occurring? Absolutely. I had a case where a gentleman called me, built a house on 37th and Brooklyn, and an inexperienced appraiser went there, um, not of African American descent, was a second generation appraiser, and up and said the man's house was not new construction. What the gentleman did was he raised the previous old house and he used the foundation to build a new house. That is new construction. all day long. What is above ground is new. But for whatever reason, through ignorance, I would suspect if I were to take it further, I might say it was bias. He said it was not new construction, and that in and of itself caused $130,000 discrepancy. He did appraise
Wow.
that man's house $130,000 less than what it was actually worth.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because we've had some conversations, off camera, of course. And one thing that you shared with me was the appraisal industry overall, what it takes to become an appraiser, and how there's a
Mhm.
barrier that's automatically built in that has locked out a lot of African Americans from becoming appraisers, so that we can kind of balance the scales. And so the last thing that I saw, it was roughly 2 to 4% of all appraisers in the
Mhm.
country are African American. So it's a very, very small percentage that
Mhm.
would give fair value to an African American home.
Mhm.
You have to have a bachelor's degree in some instances, depending on the level of appraiser
Mhm. The biggest
to
issue
pay.
right now,
And
it's
then,
like, for example, me. I'm a licensed. There are three levels of licensure. There's a licensed appraiser, a certified residential
right,
appraiser, and a certified general appraiser. A certified general appraiser can do commercial property and residential property, and a certified residential appraiser can appraise any value of residential property, um, but they cannot do commercial property. And a licensed appraiser, which is what I am, I can appraise up to $1 million of residential and up to $400,000 of a 2 to 4 family dwelling. Now, yeah, I can always get, say, a certified or a general appraiser to sign off on my work, and if we are in agreement, that's not an issue. But the issue today is that, for example, I can mentor a trainee, but I cannot supervise a trainee. So, therefore, although I have all this experience and prior to 2008 supervised a trainee to help somebody get their license, after 2008, the rules and regulations by the Appraisal Foundation, and that is what uniform standards of appraisal practice comes from. Those rules are then disseminated to the states, and the states generally accept the rules and regulations the foundation promulgates. So, and to make a long story short, they've changed. Plus, most appraisers are over 50 years of age, and you have natural attrition. Okay, so it is difficult for someone who aspires to become an appraiser to get training under a supervisor. That's the issue.
got it, got it. No, I appreciate you sharing that. And so, would you say that there's a big opportunity for people that want to get into the appraisal industry?
I would say there's a phenomenal opportunity. I was listening to YouTube um, yesterday, and a lady, a venture capitalist, was talking about, um, and no matter what your political persuasion is, you got we should all be aware that I'm a baby boomer. I told you my age. We're the dominant population in the world, but we're not going to live forever. And we own businesses. When it says who owns the wealth in this country, it's my generation. And we own it in real estate and the businesses. And that has to transfer. Okay? So it's an opportune time for somebody to come along and go, you know what, Miss Gray, you're 70 years old and I'm a certified residential appraiser. How about we come and work together, and I do the marketing and that person does the work, and I make sure that that person is trained properly and build the business, and I back my behind out of it. And now I have sold my business. And we're talking about legacy, and we're talking about transference of wealth, because most small businesses do not transfer from generation to generation. So I could afford to sell that person my business and never, ever, ever go to a bank because I
Wow.
don't hold the deed. But we have got to think outside of the box. And all of these businesses that baby boomers had owned and all of the knowledge and what have you, if we don't find a way to transfer this, it's going to be lost. And
Wow.
then the importance of real estate appraisal, if you don't know what you're worth, I bet you there's somebody else that does, and it might not be what you're really worth. And then
Yeah.
what?
Mm. I
And
appreciate that wisdom. Yes,
let me
ma'am.
just say too that you're going to transfer your property, your assets, the stuff that you own, one way or the other, either through divorce, death, or just life. So what Kathy said, appraisal business, I don't see it ever not being needed because either a person, 50, you get married, 50% chance of getting divorced. You have to get properties appraised in divorces. We all gonna leave this earth, and you need to, know the value of your property. So just keep that in mind. We're gonna transfer our property one way or the other.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, again, so you have three people here. I work in the life insurance industry where I'm able to create generational wealth through the power of life insurance. We have Ms. Kathy Allen Gray, who's able to appraise properties, and she's just a wealth of information on the real estate market here in Kansas City as it relates to value. And then Ms. Angela Habiba, who can actually secure everything through contracts as an attorney for estate planning. And so let's go around if you just want to give your information, how people can get a hold of you, and then just maybe a final thought on generational wealth and exactly what it is that you do. If we start with you, Ms. Gray.
Okay, well, again, my name is Kathy Allen Gray. I'm a licensed real estate appraiser in the state of Missouri. I've been practicing since 2001. I'm the proprietor of Ladies Appraisal Service. You can reach me online at www.ladiesappraisal.com. You can also reach me on YouTube at Real Estate Appraisal 411. On that channel where I talk about issues in real estate and I explain different concepts that you may not know, like what is an as is and subject to appraisal. Can I get one all at one time? Just general conversations, and I have made videos, and these videos I made are from questions that I received from the public or consultations that I've had with the public that told me that the public don't understand this. So, I'm always around to try to help, inform and inspire.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you. Miss Angela, can you tell the people
Oh,
how to get in contact with you?
again, yeah. So I am Angela Habeebullah, managing partner of the law offices of Angela Habeebullah, and the biggest part of my practice is again estate planning, and estate planning deals with plans when you're not able to speak for yourself, and what you want to happen with your property. So estate planning can also cover if you're a younger generation and you have minor children, you can put in your estate plan what happens, who raises your children if something happens to you. So I advise everybody, I don't care what the value of your estate is, that's the stuff that you own, at least seek and have consultation with an estate attorney. It will save you headaches down in the long run. My office is in downtown Kansas City. I'm in Crown Center, 2405 Grand, Suite 800. My website is www.ayh, initials of my name, law.com. And again, my areas of practice, estate, bankruptcy, tax work, and mediation. And so I would be happy to speak with anyone um, in terms of or regarding estate planning and how it can be beneficial to you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you both so much. Again, we talked about generational wealth. If you have a need for life insurance, You can reach out to me. My name is A.L. Johnson. My website scrolling across the bottom, aljohnsonlifeinsurance.com. We can all work together. And that's one thing that you said, Ms. Gray, that I absolutely love. I consider myself to be someone who brings people together as well. It's so important in our community. And so if you need appraisal services, you have Mrs. Gray here. If you need an estate plan or to create a trust for your family to make sure that everything's protected and things go the way you want them to, even when you're not here, you can contact Miss Angela. And if you want to create generational wealth through life insurance, you can contact me. And so we appreciate all of you for tuning in. Make sure that you share this with your network, review it again, take notes, and give us a call if you need our help. We appreciate each and every one of you. And the ladies, can you just wave to them bye really quick? We will see you